Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with dumbfounding definitions, dizzying distinctions, and diabolical doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video we're going to be looking at what is a trope in metaphysics, specifically. Now, why do I say in metaphysics? Well, there's several different kinds of trope, or at least there's several different meanings to the word trope, depending on the discipline you're talking about. So trope is originally going to be found in literature. These are figures of speech, such as metaphor, metronyms, irony, synecdoches, and so on. This is where we originally get the word trope. However, most people are probably aware of trope because of pop culture. Now, a trope in pop culture is a reoccurring cliche, motif, or literary device throughout various works in a genre. The damsel in distress trope, or deus ex machina, might be considered a trope. Now, while I said that it probably appears in literature first, tropes in pop culture can even be traced back as far as Aristotle and his Poetics, but that's a subject of another video. Today we're going to be talking about tropes in philosophy, particularly in metaphysics. And for philosophy, they are abstract particulars. What's that, you might ask? Well, something is abstract if it is not spatio-temporal. It doesn't exist in space-time, or it can't interact with the world causally. Generally, abstract objects are considered to be universals, but tropes are going to break that rule, because they're going to also be particular, which is the opposite of universal. These are objects which cannot be instantiated in other objects, like universals. Universals would be something like the color red, and a particular red apple might instantiate that redness, but the apple itself would be particular. Tropes, however, are both abstract, like the color red, but particular, like a specific apple. Generally, particular objects are considered to be concrete. Now, this might be very confusing for you if you've always understood abstract objects to be universal and particular objects to be concrete, but tropes are going to kind of parse a different distinction there. So, tropes are going to solve an age-old debate between classical nominalists and classical realists. So, classical nominalism rejects abstract objects and universals. You can have specific versions of nominalism against abstract objects or universals. Watch my video on nominalism for more on that. But this makes it difficult to talk about strange properties, like properties in general, or something as weird as being full of holes. Check out David Lewis's paper on that if you're curious. Realism, on the other hand, claims that there are abstract universals that can be instantiated in various objects to explain away these weird properties that can exist wholly in multiple places at once. But universals are really strange things that a lot of people don't really want in their ontology. So, how can we deal with this? How can we explain properties that can exist wholly in separate objects at once, while also not including weird universals in our ontology? This is where tropes come in. Tropes are abstract, so they can explain properties that nominalists cannot explain, but they are particular, so they don't ontologically commit us to strange universals. Instead of a lollipop instantiating a universal of redness, or being just a concrete particular with nothing in common with a red flag, a trope theory might claim that there existed one trope, which was the redness of the lollipop, and another trope, which was the redness of the flag. Each of those tropes are particular. They're a specific thing related to that object, the redness of the lollipop. It's not the color red, but it's the redness of the lollipop. But they're also abstract. They're not something we can interact with. I can't interact with the redness of the flag. I can interact with the flag maybe, but not the redness of it. Each object, of course, would have other tropes as well, such as the sweetness of the lollipop or the squareness of the flag. Under this conception, the flag and the lollipop, we might say they would share the property of redness, not because they both instantiate the same universal, but because they each have a distinct trope which is qualitatively identical to the other. Now, some trope theorists would go so far as to claim there is nothing but tropes, and they can replace even concrete particulars as well as abstract universals. So we took on this trope project to get rid of abstract universals and explain them away, but maybe we can go so far as to explain away concrete particulars as well. the claim here is often that concrete particulars are simply bundles of tropes, that an object is nothing more than a sufficient number of tropes sharing the same space. Now, we're going to look into these theories more specifically when we look at bundle theory, but basically this is just taking the idea of tropes one step further, that an object such as a lollipop is nothing more than a collection of tropes such as redness, sweetness, roundness, all of those things that we might consider properties of that lollipop. What do you think? Do tropes exist? Can they replace universals? Can they replace even concrete particulars? Could they replace everything? Do we need anything other than tropes to explain the objects in the world around us? Write your answers in the comments below and watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.